Wisconsin, and they moved all the way to Pensacola to serve and then get equipped, and then God launched them over to Scotland. So come and talk to us.
Well, that's something everybody wants to hear. You're competent. Well, it could be a whole hour. Where'd you go? Well, I wasn't sure if you guys were staying or not, so just be ready. You might have to help us with something. My name is Ryan, and this is my wife, Chris, and later in the video, which is much later, you'll get to see our daughter, Cassie. And we have been in Scotland for 17 years. It's interesting, when we first were trying to decide where we were going to go and where we were going to go serve and all of those things, we got offered a lot of advice and a lot of input. My wife actually worked for Globe as a finance secretary for years, and every time a missionary would come in, she would ask them, she would say, if you had one piece of advice, what is that one thing you would tell a missionary as they're getting ready to go on the field? And a lot of it was prayer and, be faith-based and solid and all of these things. And I remember, I'm not going to say what his name was, and I remember he came in and she asked him that question, and she is waiting for this just pinnacle of wisdom to be bestowed upon her. And he looks right at her and he says, don't go. And I thought, ouch. I didn't feel very competent at that moment, I gotta tell you. I understood what he meant. What he meant was, if you're not squared up, this is gonna hurt, and this is gonna hurt a lot. But fortunately, we had a phenomenal group that was backing us, and you're all part of that phenomenal group.
Amen.
That you backed us with prayer, with support, with friendship and kindness. Those things are seriously underutilized and never overrated, let me tell you. So, in 2004, Chris and I and Cassie, we moved to Scotland, and we moved to this place called Overton House. Overton House is a really big house. It's 46,000 square feet.
Say that again.
It's 46,000 square feet, and we live there. And we have actually, on this trip, gotten an opportunity to use that point. And I don't know, we'll share it later. Because it's not really my story, it's my wife's story. So, we live there, and we live in an apartment that is 700 square feet. So, just a little bit smaller, and we can actually manage where we live a whole lot easier than the rest of the house. Now, the house was built in the 1850s, and it was built by the man who would become Lord Overton. It was an honorary title, not a bloodline, so when he died, that died with him. But he built it for his wife as a summer home to get her out of the city. So, I've got a summer home that we just live in all the time out of the city now. And I did that just for my wife. So, Bob and Melissa Hill had already lived in Scotland for quite a few years, and the house became available. And what that means is that the local government, called the council, put out a proposal of use. Would you like to use the house? How would you like to use the house? Tell us what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, how you're going to support it, and all these kind of things. They submitted a proposal so that the house could be used for women in crisis. The proposal got accepted, and shortly afterwards, renovation work started. We have completed all the renovation work, and we have actually had women in crisis staying at the house, and it has been interesting. It has been very different than what we all imagined it was going to be. I thought we were going to see halos and angels and all those kind of things all the time, every day. And we do, because I see my wife every day. But other than that, they're pretty few and far between, let me tell you. So, we work with His Family Church, which is our local church in Scotland. And Chris and I and Cassie, of course, we work with men's ministries and ladies' ministries, children, youth. Cassie actually leads the worship team there. And we're involved in the ministries within Overton House, including the Women in Crisis. Cassie and Bob and Melissa Hill's daughter Esther run the tea room. And the big thing that we started when we got there was this thing called Kinrick Kids. And Kinrick is just Gaelic for kingdom. And so we started that, and it's an after-school club. And right now well, not right now, but we're in 3 grade schools. And so we meet Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, different school every day. And we get to meet for an hour and a half, and what we do is we do Bible verses and games, and we do music, and we get to pray with the kids, and we do stories, and we do puppets, and we do snacks. We're very, very popular in that department. And all of that is done with just a very small idea in mind. And that's that as we help the children and their families to find hope, they find Jesus.
So since March of last year, we've been in lockdown, similar to this, but not quite to the, we have much greater restrictions. In fact, they just ended the 9th of August. And even with that, we have to have a mask mandate until the end of the year. So when we were in lockdown, the only things that were open were gas stations, grocery stores, and pharmacies. You were allowed to go to medical appointments as well. However, you could only go within 5 miles of your house. And so Overton House became very, very popular as going 5 miles from your house, they would come and they would be parking all over the grass, all over everywhere, and everywhere. And at one point we had a couple police vans come up and opened up the doors, and loads got out and just started telling people to go home. And they came up to the house and then mandated us to lock our front gate. Well, that wasn't a lot of fun. And part of it as well is that we receive our mail at the house, so how are we going to do that? Well, it ended up that we talked to the postman as they were coming up to the house, and we just said, you know, if we give you, he could give us a call when he's 5 minutes away, we'll come down, unlock it, and then he could drive through. And it was advantageous for him too, because otherwise he would have to go down to the bottom of the hill, all the way around, back up the hill, just to go to one house. So thankfully, that part of it did end back in May. We weren't even sure if we were going to be able to come this year because of the international ban, and it did end at the end of May, and praise the Lord, we were able to come on the trip. And so since then, all ministry has been done online, and anywhere from youth group to church to Kindred Kids. And Ryan will tell you about Kindred Kids and what was happening with the videos, but just to give you a for instance for church, this past Sunday was our first in-person church since March of last year.
Wow.
And from everything I understand, it went very well, by the way. Nobody died or anything like that. Now, being online, what a wonderful thing. It's awesome. It's about as exciting as watching paint dry, I gotta tell you. When you're used to 50 kids in a gymnasium, and there's all this give and take and all this stuff going on, and then you talk to a piece of plastic, and you're trying to be really excited. And it's really, really hard. I gotta tell you, it's hard to work up some enthusiasm some days because, in case you didn't know, usually what happens is you do all the filming on Wednesday afternoon and you film what I would call a couple of episodes. I don't know what else to call them. But of course you're working the rest of the time. So you're thinking about the stuff that you were just working on before you came up. And then you look in the camera and you're like, oh, it's sometimes, for me personally, it was brutal. I found it terribly difficult. And a couple of times when my wife watched the clips that I had recorded, she found it very difficult. She was extremely kind about it. So, but there is something that's really cool, and God does this all the time, and I know He does it all the time, but sometimes we forget. So we're here to possibly refresh a memory, and that's this. Even in the middle of something that's really horrible and you don't like it, and it's no fun, and it just stinks beyond belief, God is doing some things, and things are happening that you would have never thought in a million years were going to come out on the backside of this. Okay, so we start doing these things. I had never heard of a Zoom call until this last year. I didn't even know what one was. In all fairness, I really still don't know what one is. I do take part, but I don't understand how it works. But one of the things that we started doing with the kids in Sunday school specifically was this. Because that's a Zoom meeting, so that's at least a little give and take. You have to bring a Bible verse. And it doesn't matter to me where you obviously you get from the Bible, but I mean as far as where you get it initially, it doesn't matter to me. And we had kids that had been coming to Sunday school for years start to change a little bit, because now within the Zoom meeting, of course they're at home in their pajamas and usually eating cereal when we're meeting. And so they're sitting there and they're talking about the Bible verse. Well, this is a thing that we noticed that happened, that even though we were trying to get it to do initially, we couldn't seem to get it to do. Kids started getting more excited about the Bible verses that they were bringing. Because they had to find one, it became theirs. Once it became theirs, nobody can take it away from them. Okay? My point being this: if you are not spending time personally reading the Bible, you are cheating yourself enormously. And I don't say that to make anybody feel bad or anything. I'm simply saying, think of it this way, if this helps. I know what the winning lottery numbers are. Okay? Let's say I know what they are. And I share them with you. And you don't use them. You have now just lost out dramatically. Okay? But if you use them, you get all the rewards that go along with it. When we spend time reading our Bible, it's like winning the lottery. Those things come in, they become part of us, they go to your core, you can hold on to them, and then later when something is happening, they are yours. And nobody but nobody can take those things away from you. So, I have kids that have been coming forever. And we had 2 of those children actually give their heart to the Lord. And I found that amazing, because all this time you're trying to reach, and then a shift happens, and you have to do it a little differently, and then all of a sudden a connection's made. So even when there's a shift going on, God is still at work in the middle of that shift. So we post these videos weekly on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel now. I feel so incredible. I barely figured out how to get there the other day. And
thank God for your wife.
oh yeah, well, every day, man. You get up, you thank God, then you thank God for your wife, and that's exactly the way it goes. But it is amazing. The learning curve has been very, very steep, but it has been a blast. And quite honestly, on video, there's stuff you can do that you can't do in the live because it's on video. And so, why don't you talk about the rest of the Kinder Kids videos? Or do you want me to?
That's fine. So with the Kinder Kids videos, we, for one of our schools, we're part of their Facebook page, and it's a private page. So it used to be where just Kinder Kids got to see the videos, and now the whole school, all the families get to see the Kinder Kids videos. Okay. So to me, that's just God turning all of this around into something awesome that the kids and families of the whole entire school now get to see. And one of the things that have happened the last couple months is Globe has asked Ryan and I to become part of the member care team. And I have to say, we are loving it. And what that means is all of the missionary children that are 5 to 12 get to meet with us a couple times a month. And when we meet, it's over Zoom. The kids are so excited to be on the calls. And that's the part that it makes it even more awesome. They love being able to interact with one another. They're forming friendships with one another. And it's just been a lot of fun. So with the calls, we start out, and Doozer is our bright orange fuzzy puppet, and he teaches a Bible verse, and we talk about the Bible verse. We do a couple songs with actions, and then we have a lot of chatting time. Just build friendships, talking about the cares, being able to pray for one another. I find it amazing that even with the kids, and they're not even 12 years old, that one of them in particular, at the very end, when we were finished praying, she's like, "No, you haven't told us what yours are. We want to be able to pray for you too."
Oh, good word.
And that was just awesome. And we received a note from one of the parents, and I'm going to share that note. Our son loves it. It's a blessing to the Globe kids. This is going to be such a community building thing for these kids. and I know it will help them feel a part of something bigger. It's awesome. Thank you for all you do, for all your effort and energy that you pour out into loving our Globe kids.
Good work.
So let's see, it says here, work at Overton House continues, apparently. So, Overton House, 46,000 square feet, renovation is complete except for the basement, and yes, the work always continues. There's always something. Shortly before we came, we had to relocate the office for the girls' floor, which meant rewiring all the cameras and the security system. And in one of our newsletters, I don't know if it was the last one or the one before, my wife is always asking me, she goes, I need pictures, I need pictures, I need pictures. Well, I always forget because I'm in the middle of doing something and I'm thinking, oh geez, I should call Chris and we should get a picture of this because this will be really cool. So when you put your newsletters together, make sure you get good pictures. So I thought, oh, this is great. So I called her up on my wonderful, I have a smartphone now. It used to be a flip phone, but now it's a smartphone. I am special. So I'm on there and say, grab the camera and go up to the bridge, and I think you'll get a really good picture. Okay, great. So hang on. So my wife goes out to the bridge, and I'm hanging off the roof, rewiring this stuff, rerunning this cable. And she goes, you couldn't have done something inside? Couldn't have been doing the cable work inside? I could have just stuck the camera up going, I said, no, I don't want to do it that way. I'm hardcore, baby. So, but with the renovation work, with the house, there are challenges. And the challenge that we are facing right now is that right after I left, the water filter system went kaput. The good news was I got that fixed, and then the water pump system went kaput, and we're in the process of getting that fixed. Now, I was talking to a friend of mine just the other day, and we were talking about something, and he told me to share this story, and I thought, he's got a really good point, so here we go. A couple of years ago, I'm sorry, let me start this way. It's going to cost us about $11,000 to replace the water pump, okay? A lot of money. Yes, we all understand the zeros. But a couple of years ago, we were in a bad way. We had 8 gas boilers in the building. And so they're all divvy up to different sections of the house. Well, they're all about 18 years old. So we got a problem. We're going to need to replace these. At a cost of about $20,000. And I'm thinking to myself, it's going to have to be God now. Well, the good news is it was God. We met with a guy, used to be a pastor, and we hadn't seen him in, I don't know, years. I mean, years and years and years, hadn't seen him. So he directs us to his house. And we're driving in an area that we had never been before, up in Minneapolis, or up in Minnesota rather. And we're going along, and I'm like, we're out in the middle of nowhere. And all of a sudden we come up, and the sat-nav tells us, you have arrived. And I looked over and went, yes, I have. My gosh, that house was big. I mean, don't get me wrong, my house is bigger, but that was a big house. And I'm like, I don't think we're in the right place. And Chris is like, no, man, this is saying we're in the right place. So we pull in, you pull up in the big driveway, you ring the doorbell. I'm thinking, we're going to get arrested. This is what's going to happen. Sure enough, the guy's behind the door. A couple years ago, through an investment that they made on a whim, they came into some money. So he asked me, he says, Ryan, what's your biggest need at the house right now? And I said, well, as long as you asked. He said, we need $20,000 to replace the boilers. And he asked how the giving works within Globe, and I explained it all, and he goes, okay, well then we'll just round it up to $23,000. And I went, okay. And we left, we got in the car, and we all went, yeah, baby! Now, we didn't tell Bob and Melissa right away, because quite honestly, there's still a little hint of doubt there. And I was waiting for the check to clear. And so a couple days go by, we contact Alan and say, hey, this thing's coming in, and this explained everything. He goes, oh, that's great. Let us know when it gets there. So it took, we were back in Scotland at the time. And so I gotta tell you, that's a wonderful moment. Walk across the hall to the other side of the house and go, hey, Bob, Melissa, you got a minute? Just thought I'd let you know. We talked to a guy this summer, and he's decided to pay for all the boilers to be replaced. Yeah. Just so you know, I didn't actually do anything. I just happened to be the guy there. I say that for this. If he can do the 20, he can do the 11.
Yes.
So I just don't worry about it too much.
So I'm going to share a story about Lucy. And Lucy grew up through Kinder Kids, and now she's 18 years old. And at one point, she sent me a message and just said, can I call you? So I gave her my phone number, and it wasn't even a minute later that she called. And when she did, she just said, I need somebody to talk to. It just wasn't working. She had gone through some horrendous trauma and was just having a really hard time. And so all I did was listen, because sometimes they don't want to hear your theology, they just want you to listen. And so I listened, and at the end I said to remind yourself of the things that you learned in Kinder Kids. And you know that all things will turn around to the good, and that God does have a plan, He does have a purpose for her. And this all started way back in February, and even to this day we keep in contact. It might be a Bible verse, might be just something silly, but she knows that I'm there and that God does and is always with her.
So since everything's been online, one of the things we've been doing a lot is we've been calling around a lot to different people in the church, and we've got these little kind of 5-10 minute sort of Bible studies where you just kind of, it's a Bible verse and you chat a little bit, but it's not like a Bible study. And they last about 5-10 minutes, unless you're Chris and you're talking to Kathy. Kathy is 84 years old, and she talks to Chris, and it always goes about 45-50 minutes long. And Kathy always says the same thing at the end. She goes, Chris, I think I'm the oldest Kinder kid that you have. And she is, just so you know.
So I got a message from a lady named Jackie, and her kids have come through Kinder Kids. And when she sent a message, she said, asked, can you pray for my mom? Because she's having problems with her kidneys, and she was in kidney failure. And so I wrote out a prayer and sent it. And then a few hours later, she just said, well, can you pray for my family? Okay, off it went. And then later on, it changed a few more times. And with all of that, in the evening, we got a notification saying that there was going to be a video call. And she asked us to pray for her whole family. And so she arranged it, got all of her family involved. And while we don't know where they stand with the Lord, we know this: they heard the gospel. And the awesome part about all of it that is amazing is that her mom is now out of kidney failure.
Wow.
Praise the Lord. Yeah.
I was going to go somewhere with that, but I don't remember. So I'm not going to. I'll go back to the notes. So we were in lockdown for 5 months, and then we were out for 2, and then we were in lockdown again for 4 months. So we've had some time, and Cassie's had a bit of time, because the tea room's not been open. So last summer, when they were on lockdown, she wrote this book, and it's called 60 Days of Faith and Fun by Cassie Haney. I like that one. So then, at the beginning of the year, we ended up in lockdown again. So she thought, I got some time. So she wrote another one. And this one's 30 Days of Faith and Fun, proof that God made faith and fun for adults too. Now, I do apologize. If you're between 5 and 12, you get 60 days. If you're a teenager and adult, you get 30. It's just the way it goes. Enjoy being a kid while you're a kid. Now, I did have somebody else comment on that, and my wife's response to that was, if you buy them both, you get 90. And I kind of like that. I thought that was pretty darn clever. So
That's funny.
I would like to say that that idea was mine, but it wasn't, but that's okay. But actually, we have some of these, and they're on the table over there, and they're $10 a piece. And we don't want to carry them anymore. So if you want to buy us out later today, that would be perfectly okay. Now, I don't know if you're aware, and I don't want to surprise anybody here, freak anybody out, but there's this thing over this last year called COVID. And it's been around a little bit, and it's impacted a lot of people. And one of the things that's happened, it has impacted not just us, but other missionaries as well. But I will tell you this, our level of partnership is down, but we are not in want. God has taken care of us every single step of the way.
Amen.
And I do find it interesting the way he does it. We're not always in complete agreement with the process. When I pray about it and I talk to God about my concerns and things, he's very clear. He tells me regularly that him and I are not a committee. He tells me regularly that he is not taking anything that I say under advisement, and that there's going to be a vote. I still think there should be, but apparently my vote doesn't carry enough weight to go with the method and timing and everything that he has in place. So to say this is, God is still in charge. He's still on the throne. He's still got our backs.
Yes.
And he has never left us out there hanging, no matter where we find ourselves. Now, we do have a video, so if you would please, James, and it'll talk and cover a few things that we haven't.
On our table, we've got a couple different cards, and with those cards has our email address. If you would like to sign up to receive our newsletter, we do one that's mailed, and one that's emailed is about our prayer needs. So if you want to grab a card and just shoot us an email. And I'm going to go off script for just a second. I just want, because normally it's Ryan, so it's my turn. I just want to say thank you very, very much for your prayers and your support, especially in the coming days. My mom is in hospice care and she is at home, and so that's why we've canceled the rest of our trip to be with her and my dad and family. So please do keep us in prayers, and we thank you for them.
You know, when Cassie did those books, well, when she did the first one, the only way I could have been more proud, of course, is if I'd have gotten up earlier in the day. It just impresses me to no end. But it does make me think of three things, and that is, kids are important, character counts, and how are they ever going to learn unless somebody teaches them? So thank you very much, Pastor, and thank you very much for allowing us to share just some of the things that are going on in Scotland.
Good things, good. Good. By the way, Cassie was 15 when y'all went. She was just a young teenager when she went. She is the baby. She's an awesome minister of the gospel. Just a couple of things I want to ask and let them answer. Some people in the house may not understand. Overton is very different. It's not like my house. It's a public house and like a public park. Would you take a moment and explain why people would come to Overton and park all over the grass and how that works?
In Scotland, there is no such thing as no trespassing. Okay. The only time that no trespassing comes into play is with government facilities and the military. So anybody is actually allowed to go anywhere. Overton House and the estate are 98 acres, and there's trails and stuff all over the place. So people come up and walk their dogs and all this kind of stuff all the time. When lockdown happened and you couldn't go anywhere, you could go outside. That was the one place you could go. So that's why everybody was coming up to the house, because you had all these paths to walk on and stuff. And I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous up there, and I can totally understand why they come up. It was so overloaded. The whole concept of trying to keep people separated from each other was simply displaced from this area to this area.
Good. Now, what we'll do is, I know not all of you are on Facebook, but let's take your older video with the drone above and put it on our Facebook. Would you put it in our friends? Okay, if you've not seen that video, it's about 10 minutes or so, isn't it?
Yes.
No, but the part, the one that is really, if you've not seen Overton from the air, it shows you you get an idea of the 98 acres of 46,000 square feet, that sort of thing. Now, Kindred Kid is one of the predominant things they would do in a public school. Now, can you imagine in America them saying to a local group of Christians, would you come into the public school and would you take our public children as put school kids and preach the gospel to them? Praise be to God. Okay, the church that this was started by Bob and Melissa there is part of the church there. But they also do some other things. You mentioned, now I know all these things because I know everything. I've walked with this couple a long time, explained some of the reason for the tea room when we're not in COVID, and explain a little bit about how the rest of the house is used, okay?
So the tea room is open to the public, and honestly, it's so that the public can come in and see what we're doing. Because the two couples are American, the Scottish people want to know what's going on in their beloved house. And so that is one way for the public to come in. And there's also a group that's on the outside. What's the Woodland Trust? And they're the ones that have done all the paths around the house.
What's the pad?
Paths.
Paths. The walkways.
Yes. And so that's why, you know, we have a lot of people up there. Now, the one floor is for women in crisis, and at this time, it's being refigured just a little bit. There's a group possibly coming in that will be doing that.
Good, wonderful, thank you. Now, let's take just a moment. If you have a question, since we have a video and I've got the mic, would you ask your question? I'll repeat it, and they can answer it. Anybody, let's go here. Anybody in this section got a question that you'd like to ask of the Haneys? Okay, anybody in this section got a question you'd like to ask of Ryan or Chris? Yes, Sir James. Oh, right here, Jerry.
Anyway, the question I had is, you have it available for all the kids and the families in the schools. Can you tell how many of them are actually looking at those videos?
Okay, the question is, can they have some way to track the kids the numbers of kids and those that might view Kindred Kids on video now that they're doing this remotely?
So the YouTube ones, yes, you can track. Those are put onto the school's Facebook page, but we're also putting ones that include pictures of the kids that are in that school for a bigger draw so that they're wanting to watch. And those we cannot because because of child protection, we're not allowed to share those pictures outside of that Facebook page.
Good work. Okay, anybody else in this section got a question? Yes, Diana.
I'm just curious because I'm new to you guys. How did Kindred Kids get started?
How did Kindred Kids get started?
We started it up at the house initially, and for years we had like 4 kids, and it's just the way it was. I remember the day.
Was way out. I mean, it's not like.
Yeah, it was actually at Overton House. It wasn't at the schools to start with. So then we eventually got up to 10, and we thought we had arrived at 10. And one of the parents of one of the kids started talking to their school about what we were doing. So then Chris set up a meeting to go down and talk to Mrs. Robertson about the possibility of doing the club there. And there was a team from North Carolina there. I remember this very specifically. We all prayed about it before Chris went down. It was like, favor, all the things that you would normally pray for. She gets down there, she sits in Mrs. Robertson's office, and Mrs. Robertson goes, you know, I don't really know why you're here, but I actually do have a question for you. He goes, okay. I hear you have an after-school club up at Overton House. Yes? Would you consider having it here? And we were actually the very first after-school club that school had ever had. And so then that just exploded, and then what happened from that school is we had somebody move to another school, and they went and talked to their principal, and that's how we got into there. And it's interesting because There were no after-school clubs when we started, of any kind, just none at all. And we've been interviewed by the government because what our after-school clubs include turns out to be beneficial for the schools. So because of some of the things that we do, they actually get funding and access to resources that they don't get otherwise. So it's been very beneficial to both of us. Does that actually answer your question? Okay.
Chris, this, you may have already done it and I may have missed this. Could you post the link to your YouTube channel, Kindred Kids, so that our kids can see that? Good, good. That'll be on our Friends of Charity Chapel page, and if you're not on Facebook, tell me and I'll get you that detail. Anybody else in this section? Anybody in the center section, Becky Durr section here?
I just want to say I've been there twice, and what they're doing is awesome.
Becky Durr wanted you to know, for those online, that she's visited Overton House twice, along with Nepal and Japan, and Jordan and Israel and every other place that you can imagine. And she said it's wonderful, and it is wonderful. What I love is the diversity of ministry and the team that God raised up there. There's Ryan, Chris, and Cassie. There's Jessica Tomlinson, and then Bob and Melissa Hill, and other teams come and serve and assist. And then there's Esther. There's a whole team there. It's wonderful. This section over here. Does anybody have a question over here? Yes, sir.
Who was y'all's, like all those acres and when?
Who mows it? Says the young man with a lawnmower. The question is 96 acres or 90 whatever it was. Who mows all that lawn? And if you see it from the air, you understand there's a lot to maintain.
The good news is we actually only maintain 10. So we only maintain 10. We don't have to maintain the 98. And we have 2 pieces of equipment, a large riding skag lawnmower and a large walk-behind mower. I usually get the walk-behind. Because that's what's happened when your name is Bob and you're the senior missionary on site. You get to sit on there and just kind of tool around and wave to the people like the queen and royalty, while the rest of us sweat like banshees. Get behind. She's terrible. Okay, none of that is mostly true. Okay,
So 10 acres you maintain like a lawn. It's beautiful. And then the rest is a nature preserve area. Okay, good. Good question. Anybody else got anything? Yes, sir, Gary. Or somebody else.
I was going to say, how many people do you reach like every week or every month or something?
The question is, do we have any way of knowing how many people they reach every week or month, a year through the ministries of Overton House and Kindred Kids?
So we haven't been able to be in the schools since March of last year, but during that time, we had a total of about 150 on our rosters. So
that's the Kindred Kids.
that's for Kindred Kids, and then you have church, you have children's church, you have youth.
You have people coming to the property.
Yes, we have lots of people coming to the property.
Okay. So I don't know that we have an accurate count of how many people would come, but we do know we're talking about 3 different schools. So 3 different schools, 1 day a week, probably 150 kids plus. And the key here, so you don't mind me blowing your horn, is it's not 1 year, but it's year after 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 year. That's where it happens when you start reaching. This group's children are now coming into where that group started this. The longevity and the consistency floats my boat.
So I'm going to say something not to embarrass my husband, but to admonish him. We got an email from one of the head teachers, which is the principal, and he wanted to talk about us and about Kindred Kids. And what he was seeing was that Ryan as a role model, that the kids can see that they can have a great time, they can have a laugh, but they can be serious and they can have a positive life. And the kids come up to Ryan and yes, they do. They joke around a lot. I know he seems like a very serious person, but they do have a really good time. And that Ryan loves the Lord, and that just oozes out onto the kids. And it points the kids to Jesus. And Mr. Simpson was talking about how in the school there's only him and one other male in the whole school, and the majority of our kids come from single parent families, and so they don't have a male role model in their life, but they do when they come to Kinder Kids. They see not only me interacting with Ryan, but Cassie the child, even though she is an adult, how we all interact with one another.
That'll preach, sister. That'll preach. Okay. Yes, sir, Gary.
Becky, you're saying you support this message, right? That's what your testimony was. You support
Yes.
Yes.
The answer is yes.
So, out of 17 years in Scotland, do you have one specific thing that God gave you creatively that impacts these kids?
Okay, the question is, after 17 years of ministry in Scotland and all the years of Kendrick, is there any one thing that stands out about one way you've been able to impact children for the gospel? That's a loaded question. 17 years, one thing.
There you go.
All right.
I'm happy.
So, this would not be a creative thing we did. This is a creative thing God did. Okay, so in that we had a boy named Ross, and actually he was in our video. And when Ross was born, he was addicted to drugs. And with that, he could not sit still, like ever. So during Kinder Kids, he would sit and spin all the time. And we would have to tell him many, many times, every time we met, to sit still. And one day during worship, he was standing over here, and we always do actions to the songs, and it's just to have a better connection to what you're singing so that they can understand what the words are. And he started to cry. And we knew just to leave him alone for the time being, and that afterwards we were just asking God to give us a time that we can actually talk to him, because we can't meet one-on-one. That with child safety, you can't do that. However, God provided a time along the side afterwards for Ross to come up. And he said he had a vision. And a vision that's not a word that we would normally use in Kinder Kids. So he had my attention. And so he said that in the vision, he saw God's hand, and God was showing him the way to go. From that day on, he never spun again.
Wow.
Never. And it goes farther, even that during Kinder Kids, if there was children around him that were misbehaving or talking, he would literally, well, he would smack him one, which isn't recommended. However, he would say, you need to listen to what they're saying because it's important.
Wow.
Good word.
Does that actually answer what you asked?
In a roundabout way, but
That's good.
Well, I'm just trying to make sure that we don't skip
yeah,
it.
that was good. But
Good.
there's how you do with these kids is amazing. And so the question was, in a sense, was there something that God showed you? How do you reach that I know that all the children are different, but is there one
Right.
thing that you noticed in the 17 years?
Yes, there is one thing. Time. Time.
That's a good word, right?
Because I don't hate, because we don't hate anything but sin. However, I strongly dislike the concept of when I hear somebody say, I'm going to schedule some quality time. Quality time is wonderful. You schedule time and quality will come out of it. But the concept of trying to wedge out 20 minutes in your day and that's all going to be quality, I don't believe that for a minute.
That's a good word.
And, well, there we go. It's out there and everywhere now. But time, showing up, being consistent, being there, being the person that they can talk to, being able, even when they're annoying you beyond belief, to try and keep your cool, to understand that there's a reason Timmy, Jimmy, Susie, Sally, whoever is having the kind of day that he or she is having, and realizing at the end of the day, it's going to be okay. If you're simply there, that is, in my opinion, 90% of it right there. Because if you're there, something can happen. If you're not, it doesn't. So time.
I
Pastor Josh, would you get some ushers for me?
They're ready.
They're ready. Rosemary, I didn't see you. Where are you, Rosemary? I'm sorry, Rosemary.
So, Chris, if you had one thing to tell a prospective missionary, what would you tell them?
Okay, the question was, if she had one thing to tell a prospective missionary, then she's going to reap what she sowed. One thing to tell a prospective missionary, maybe not the most important, but just what's one thing you'd say to a prospective missionary? Now you get to reap what you
That
sowed.
is on the spot. I mean, I remember all the answers that I got while working in the office.
Yeah.
Honestly, you and your spouse need to be on the same page.
That's a good word. That's better than mine.
That's a good word. Okay, if our ushers will get ready, if you'd like to give an offering tonight, we sort of followed the harvester's model tonight, where we do a meal and then we have a time for the missionaries. I'm going to pray over the missionaries. We're going to receive an offering, then we're going to dismiss you. You can make a check out to charity, and we'll translate all that to where it'll go to Globe and their support. Always, any missionary you want to support, if you take an envelope, put that missionary's name on the envelope. We send every penny of that to that missionary's account. Would you pray with me? Father, for Ryan and Chris, our friends that we deeply love, Lord, we're so thankful that of all the places you could have sent them when they left Wisconsin, you sent them to Pensacola and to us. And Lord, we thank you for the call of God as they walk that out through Bible school and training and Globe orientation to Lord, land them in Scotland in these years of faithfulness. Now, Lord, I ask several things. And Lord, as I pray, I ask this on behalf of our whole congregation, present and those that will be viewing, for Ryan and Chris. Father, we ask for strength to run and not be weary and walk and not faint. We ask for the mind of Christ and the wisdom of God and a peace that passes all understanding. We ask for the joy of the Lord to be their strength, that they'll run and not be weary. Father, we thank you that no weapon formed against them is going to prosper, and every snare laid up for them is broken, and they have already escaped. Lord, we thank you that they are not victims. They're not victims of COVID. They're not victims of their circumstances. They're not victims of any limitation, because your word says that they are more than conquerors through the blood of Jesus Christ. Lord, we go speak in agreement with your word, that you who began the good work in Ryan and Chris in their mother's womb, and as they grew up, and as they married, and as they traversed through life, Lord, that you would listen, that you would use them for your glory and your honor and your purposes.